Have you ever noticed a small, almost insignificant change in your partner's routine that just felt off? It's a feeling deep in your gut, a quiet whisper that something isn't right. For Mark, that feeling started with his wife Sarah's wardrobe. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic makeover. It was subtle. So subtle, in fact, that he almost dismissed it as his own imagination. Mark and Sarah had been married for 8 years. Like many couples, they had fallen into a comfortable, perhaps too comfortable, rhythm. The early days of passionate romance had mellowed into a quiet companionship. Dinners were often spent in comfortable silence, weekends filled with household chores and errands. The spark, it seemed, had faded into a low, steady ember. Mark loved Sarah, he truly did, but he couldn't deny the sense of routine that had settled over their lives. He worked as an architect, a demanding job with long hours and frequent out-of-town trips for site visits. Sarah was a freelance graphic designer, working from her home office. Her schedule was flexible, a perk they both appreciated, or at least they used to. The first time Mark noticed it was on a Tuesday. He had a last-minute site inspection in a neighboring city, meaning he'd be gone for the day. As he was packing his briefcase that morning, Sarah emerged from their bedroom. She was wearing a stunning emerald green dress he hadn't seen before, one that perfectly complemented her eyes. Her hair, usually pulled back in a simple ponytail when she was working from home, was styled in soft waves. A light, fragrant perfume lingered in the air. "Wow," Mark said, genuinely surprised. "You look amazing. Do you have a client meeting today?" Sarah just smiled, a quick, almost dismissive smile. "Oh, no, just felt like dressing up. Have a good trip, honey." She gave him a peck on the cheek and disappeared into the kitchen. Mark stood there for a moment, a strange mix of admiration and confusion swirling inside him. It was unusual. On a typical workday, Sarah lived in yoga pants and oversized sweaters. This was a full-on transformation. He shrugged it off, telling himself she was just trying to break the monotony. It was a good thing, right? Then it happened again. The following week, he had another day trip. This time he came home early because the meeting was canceled. As he quietly let himself into the house, he found Sarah in the living room, reading a book. She was dressed in a chic blouse and tailored trousers, her makeup flawlessly applied. The moment she saw him, her eyes widened in surprise, and a flicker of something he couldn't quite name crossed her face. Was it disappointment? "You're home early," she exclaimed, her voice a little too bright. "Yeah, the meeting was postponed." "You look great again." "Seriously, what's the occasion?" Mark asked, trying to keep his tone light. "No occasion," she said, closing her book. "Just trying to feel more put together, you know? Working from home can make you feel a bit frumpy." It was a plausible explanation, a perfectly logical reason. Yet the gut feeling persisted. The next time he was scheduled to be away, Mark decided to try a little experiment. He told Sarah he had a 2-day conference out of state. He packed a small overnight bag, kissed her goodbye, and drove off just like he always did. But instead of heading to the airport, he circled the block and parked his car down the street, where he had a clear view of their front door. He felt ridiculous, like a character in a cheap spy movie. He was spying on his own wife, but the nagging suspicion wouldn't let him go. He waited. An hour passed. Then, just as he was about to give up and call himself a paranoid fool, the front door opened. Sarah stepped out. She was wearing a beautiful, form-fitting sundress and heels. Her hair was down, her lipstick was a bold red, and she was carrying a small, elegant handbag. She looked radiant, happy, and expectant, like the way she used to look when they first started dating, when she was getting ready for a night out with him. She didn't get into her car. Instead, she walked to the corner and stood there. A few minutes later, a sleek black sedan pulled up. A man Mark didn't recognize got out of the driver's side, opened the passenger door for her, and she slid in, laughing at something he said. The car drove off. Mark felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs, sat in his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. It was real. It wasn't his imagination. The beautiful dresses, the perfect hair, the fragrant perfume. They weren't for him. They weren't even for her. They were for someone else. She was dressing up only on the days he wasn't home. That simple fact spoke volumes, screaming a truth he had been trying to ignore. The silence in their home wasn't comfortable companionship. It was a vast, empty space that she had been filling with a secret life. He drove home the short distance, feeling like an eternity. The house was quiet, but now the silence was deafening. He walked into their bedroom and opened her closet. He saw the new dresses, the stylish blouses, all pushed to one side. On the other side were the familiar yoga pants and comfortable sweaters. It was like looking at two different people, two different lives, separated by a row of hangers. He didn't know what to do. Should he confront her? Should he pack a bag and leave? The anger was a hot, boiling rage, but underneath it was a deep, crushing sadness. Where had they gone so wrong? Did she stop wanting to dress up for him? When Sarah came home that evening, she was back in her casual clothes, her makeup gone. She greeted him with a weary smile, complaining about a demanding project. The lie was so effortless, so practiced, it made Mark's stomach turn. He didn't say anything that night, or the next day. He watched her, seeing her through new eyes. He saw the furtive glances at her phone, the quick whispered calls she'd taken the other room. He noticed how she lit up when a certain notification sound chimed, a light he hadn't seen directed at him in years. The evidence was all there, a mountain of small betrayals. Finally, he couldn't take it anymore. A week after his discovery, he sat her down. He didn't yell. His voice was quiet, hollowed out by pain. Sarah, he began, we need to talk. About the green dress and the sundress. About why you only look so beautiful when I'm not here to see it. The color drained from her face. The facade crumbled. And for the first time in a long time, she looked at him with genuine, raw emotion. Tears welled up in her eyes as the whole story came tumbling out. The man's name was Alex. They had met at a coffee shop. It started as a friendship, a conversation with someone who made her feel seen, who paid her compliments, who made her feel exciting and desirable again. I didn't mean for it to happen, she sobbed. I was just so lonely, Mark. We were living in the same house, but I felt like I was completely alone. You were always working, always tired. It felt like we were just roommates. When I dressed up, it was because he noticed. He made me feel like I was worth noticing. Her words didn't excuse her actions, but they hit Mark with the force of a physical blow. He had been so focused on his own sense of neglect, he hadn't considered hers. He had seen the comfortable silence, but he hadn't recognized it as loneliness. He had stopped trying to light the spark, assuming the ember was enough to keep them both warm. He had played a part in this too. Their journey from that moment was not easy. It was filled with difficult conversations, therapy sessions, and a painful rebuilding of trust. There were days Mark wanted to walk away and days Sarah was certain she had broken them beyond repair. But her confession, born from the simple observation of her clothes, was a starting point. It was the brutal, painful truth they needed to face if they were ever going to find their way back to each other, or even to themselves. Sometimes the loudest messages are the ones that are never spoken. They're hidden in the rustle of a new dress, the scent of a forgotten perfume, and the silent, heartbreaking truth of a closet divided into two separate lives. It's a powerful reminder to pay attention to the small details, to never mistake comfortable silence for true connection, and to always, always make sure the person you love knows they are worth dressing up for. Thanks for watching.